Good evening or good morning, wherever you are in the world. I'm Suloshini, and I'm moderating the first Google Hangout session of the third annual fall edition of our Read for Pixels campaign. Through Read for Pixels, the Pixel Project is collaborating with 11 award-winning best-selling authors to raise awareness about violence against women and to raise funds towards the Celebrity Male Role Model Pixel Reveal campaign, which aims to raise 1 million to be shared between the USA's National Coalition Against Domestic Violence and the Pixel Project to keep their efforts to end violence against women alive and kicking. We'll be telling you more about the Read for Pixels fundraiser, which has loads of exclusive author goodies a little later in the session. And you can find out more about the Pixel Project. All you have to do is visit thepixelproject.net. Today, we have an extra special guest. Please join me in welcoming Veronica Rossi, best-selling author of Under the Never Sky. Veronica writes YA fiction for young adults. Her debut novel, Under the Never Sky, was the first in a post-apocalyptic trilogy and deemed one of the best books of the year in 2012 by School Library Journal. She completed her undergraduate studies at UCLA and then went on to study fine art at the California College of the Arts in San Francisco. Veronica lives in Northern California with her husband and her 2 sons, and we've just found out her dog as well. When not writing, she enjoys reading, painting, and running. Veronica has also very generously donated one special goodie bundle featuring signed and personalized first editions of her Under the Never Sky series, signed and personalized first edition of Riders, bookmarks, and a Little Riders travel bag. Thank you for that, Veronica. This goodie bundle has been snapped up by Carmen Alvarez in Florida, USA. So thank you, Carmen, for helping support our campaign. We'd just like to ask you to please give generously. All funds go towards the Pixel Project Celebrity Male Role Model Pixel Reveal campaign, which in the end helps end violence against women. So I'm going to stop talking now and pan the camera over towards Veronica. Veronica, we know that you've prepared a live reading session for us, so we're really excited about that. And once again, thank you for coming on board, and I'll leave it up to you now.
Okay, thank you, Sula. I am so happy to be here. I just jumped at the opportunity to be part of such an incredible organization, and I'm going to read from my first novel, Under the Never Sky. I'll read a little bit, and then I think we're going to have a little bit of discussion, and we'll do some questions. So, Under the Never Sky is a young adult science fiction with probably some fantasy elements. It's right here. It also has a lot of action, and there's some adventure. It's told from the perspectives of 2 characters, male and female. And essentially, the story is about opposites. I wanted to write about a girl who came from a very advanced society, who is a society that actually is inextricably linked with technology. And I wanted to pit her against a young man who is from the exact opposite. Who lives from a very primitive and almost hunter-gatherer type society. So in the story, one of the main characters, Arya, lives in an enclosed domed society where she spends most of her time online, which I think many of us can relate to. But her primary interface with reality are these, if you want to call it like a completely interactive webscape. So she not only enters it and can see it visually, she can experience it tactily. She can, taste what happens in these realms. And so this girl who's only known this kind of reality, as teenagers sometimes do, decides to kind of walk the line a little bit. And she takes some risks. She goes exploring where she shouldn't, and she gets herself into a little bit of trouble. Unfortunately, she happens to be with the son of a very important man in this enclosed city, and she is banished. She's kicked out. So Arya is going to die in the outer world unless she can find a way to survive. She doesn't have the natural immunities to survive. And in the outer world, she meets Peregrine, who she thinks is a savage. He's the young man that I mentioned earlier. And he has his own reasons for needing to help her. But I chose this passage because she really has a very transformative journey, and it's one of not really knowing the physical world to completely inhabiting the physical world and inhabiting her own body. So without further ado, okay, so she's just been cast out and she's in a cave and she's with Peregrine, who is the young man. To calm herself, Arya tried to pretend it was a realm, a Paleolithic realm. She was in a cave after all, with a fire, which she avoided looking at for the memories it brought of Act 6. But there were also steel cases to one side, and the navy blue blanket around her was made of fleece, and the glass jars lined up near the fire had metal screw-top lids. Too many things that broke the Stone Age illusion. This was real. Arya stood and winced at the pain in the soles of her feet. She pulled the blanket around her and listened for the savage. Only the piercing rhythm of her headache broke the silence. Had she been infected with disease? Would she die in this cave, wrapped in this blue fleece blanket? She drew a few slow breaths. Thinking like that wouldn't do her any good. There were supplies by the outsider's leather bag, but she wasn't going to touch any of his things. She hobbled to the steel crates. Broken pieces of plastic and glass mixed with bottles of medicine. They were useless to her now. All the expiration dates reached back more than 300 years to the time of the Unity, when the ether had forced people to live in pods. She found one sterile bandage that had yellowed with time, but it would serve. Arya drew up the blanket and gasped. Her feet were already bandaged. The savage had tended to her feet. He'd touched her. She gripped the edge of the cave, steadying herself. This was a good sign. If he'd tended to her feet, then he couldn't mean her harm, could he? The logic was sound, but just thinking about him brought a fresh whip of fear. He was a beast, immense, muscular, but not like Soren. He reminded her of the equestrian realms, how every movement in a horse showed a chorus of lean muscles rolling and shifting beneath skin. He had tattoos just like in the stories, 2 patterned bands around each bicep. When he turned his back, she'd seen another design on his skin, some sort of hawk with wings spanning shoulder to shoulder. His hair looked like it had never seen a brush, snarled blonde ropes, all uneven in length and color, coiling in every direction. And as he'd spoken, she could have sworn she'd glimpsed teeth that were a little slightly too canine, but nothing was more hideous than his eyes. She was accustomed to eyes of all colors. In the realms, purple had been the popular color just last month, but the savage's eyes had bright green eyes, reflective, like the gaze of a nocturnal animal. She turned, biting her lip as she looked around. A cave, what was she doing here? How had this happened? The fire had dwindled. She could no longer see the wall she'd sat against. She didn't want to be in this cave in the darkness with no noise and nothing to see. She fastened the navy blanket in a toga, belting it with the gauze, and went outside. She found the outsider sitting on a rock at the edge of the jagged slope where she'd fallen. He had his back to her, hadn't yet heard her. Arya stopped within the cave's mouth, a dozen feet away. She didn't want to move any closer, so she stood, hugging the blanket close to keep it from shifting with the wind. He was shaving down a long piece of wood with a knife, making an arrow, she guessed. A caveman fashioning his weapons. The tattoo on his back was of a falcon, judging by the sleek head. In the realms, people used moving designs for tattoos. They chose new ones whenever they wanted. She couldn't imagine having an image on her skin forever. The outsider turned and glared at her. Arya glared back at him, hiding her jolt of fear. How'd she known that she was there? She stepped closer, careful not to limp, and to keep a good distance. She pushed a strand of her hair back behind her ear. The ether scuttled in gentle ribbons of blue light above, swirling in the scuttling gray clouds. But she wasn't fooled this time. She knew the ether could be terrible. Below, she saw the valley where she'd crossed in the storm, mottled with uneven light. Is it twilight, she asked. Dusk, he said. Wasn't twilight the same as dusk? And how did he manage to draw such a brief little word? Dusk, like the word could go on all day. Why did you bring me here? She asked. Why didn't you just leave me out in the storm? I need information, he said. Your people took someone from me. That's ridiculous. What use could we have for a savage? More use than they had for you. Her breath caught as she remembered. The savage was right. She'd taken the fall for Soren and been put out on the outside to die. Out here. So you want to get into reverie to save this person? Is that what you were doing that night? I will get in, he said. I've done it before. She laughed. We disarmed the system. You got lucky, Savage. The walls protecting Reverie are 10 feet thick. There's no way you could ever get through them. What's your plan, anyway? Are you going to hurl dung patties? Or maybe use a slingshot? One well-aimed stone might do it. He spun and came toward her. But he strode past her, disappearing back into the cave. Moments later, he stalked back out. His eyes gleamed as he held something up. Is this better than a dung patty mole? For long seconds, Arya stared at the curved object in his hand. She had never seen smart eyes off people's faces. Seeing one in the possession of the savage, she nearly didn't recognize it. Is that mine? He nodded once. I took it after it was torn from you. Relief shot through her limbs. She could reach her mother through the smart eye. She looked up. It's not yours, it's mine. Give it to me. He shook his head. Not until you answer my questions. If I do, then will you give it to me? I said I would. Arya's heart pounded. Her mother would rescue her if she could just reach her with a smart eye. With Lumina's help, she could expose Consul Hess and find her way back inside. She couldn't believe she was considering help an outsider get into Reverie. Wasn't that treason? Hadn't Hess practically accused her of this very same thing? She could never do it. Whatever he asked about this missing person, she'd give him false information. She'd tell him what he wanted to hear, and he would never know otherwise. All right, she said. His hand snapped shut over the device, and then he crossed his arms. I'm going to just check the time really quickly. How are we doing? Okay, I'll keep going for, let's see.
It's still no worries.
Sorry, what was that, Sula?
Oh, I meant, please go ahead.
I'll keep going just a little bit longer. Okay.
Yeah.
By the way, a smart eye is the device that Arya would use to enter the realms. It's a patch that would suction to her eye. I forgot to mention that earlier. And Peregrine has her smart eye. Somehow it's come off of her face. So she's striking a deal to get it back and to hopefully get her way back home. She made a sound of disgust. There were only 2 of us who survived. One was the son of the consul, a very powerful person in our pod. I was the other. He grew silent. Her gaze darted to his chest, where she saw the tracks her fingernails had left on his skin. She looked away quickly, repulsed that she'd touched him. She shivered as a gust swept past, deciding that savages must not feel cold. Do you have any allies on the inside still? He asked. Did you just say allies? Friends, he said sharply. People who will help you. Paisley came to mind. Pain came in a wave, threatening to sweep her off. Arya breathed for a few moments, pushing it back. My mother, she'll help. His gaze narrowed. He watched her too closely. She kept herself from fidgeting, but she couldn't help adding, she's a scientist, like it would mean anything to him. You can reach her through this? He said, holding out the smart eye. Yes, she said, I think so. Could she learn about a stolen person? He asked. Arya narrowed her eyes. She couldn't see why that would ever happen. Why would anyone want a savage in Reverie? But disagreeing wouldn't help. Yes, she could. She's respected because of her work. She has some influence. She could find out something. If there's anything to find out, she'll find it. Give that to me and I'll help you. She was proud of herself. The lies had slid out smoothly. He came right up to her, bending close. You will help. It's the only way you're going to live. She leaped back. I said I would. What was wrong with him? He thrust the smart eye at her. Arya clasped it in both hands and walked away. Just holding it, she felt closer to home. She wondered how much. She wondered how much she couldn't see dirt and disease she couldn't see on it. He didn't look terribly filthy, but he had to be. He was an outsider after all. Get to it. She looked over her shoulder. Who should I ask about when I reach my mother? She asked. A boy, he said. 7 years old. He goes by the name of Talon. A boy. He thought her people had taken a child? I've waited long enough, he said. So she placed the smart eye over her left eye, feeling the tenderness over her eye socket. The biotech worked immediately. The patch suctioned to her skin, the inner membrane loosening and softening, the consistency turning from gel to liquid, until she could blink as easily as she could with her uncovered eye. She waited for the smart screen to appear, her muscles rigid with anticipation. She tried her passcodes. She tried to reset the system, the same thing she had done in Ag 6, but nothing appeared. No icons, no files. She was simply looking through the clear patch, seeing the bleak earth fade into darkness, and the sky moving with ether. What's happening? The outsider asked. Nothing, she said, as a raw ache built in her throat. It's not responding. I thought they might have linked it back up, but I don't see anything. Maybe it shorted out in the storm. I don't know. He muttered something, shoving a hand into his hair. Desperately, Arya ran through more commands as he began to pace. Every failed attempt brought her closer to crying. The outsider stopped, turning toward her. What now? I need that back, he said. I told you it doesn't work. I'm going to get it fixed, he said. She couldn't hold back a sputter of laughter. You know how to fix this? His glare was scathing. No, but I know someone who can. She still couldn't believe it. You know a person, an outsider who can fix this. Do you have to hear everything twice, Dweller? I'll be back in less than 2 weeks. There's enough food and water here to last you. Just stay put. No one comes out this way. He strode back into the cave. And just say, you know what? I'm going to go all the way to the end because I think we can do it in the time. Arya rushed after him, staying close enough to follow the pale streaks of his hair through the gloom. The fire had dwindled down to embers. He tossed a piece of wood onto them, sending a scatter of cinders upward. I'm not staying here alone. For 1 week or 2 weeks or whatever. He moved to one of the cases and began stuffing things into a leather bag. You'll be safer here. No, I'm not staying. I may not live, her voice broke. I may not live that long. My immune system isn't made to survive out here. 2 weeks might be too late. If you want my help, I need to come. He considered this for a while. He set his bag on the ground. I won't slow down for you. That means walking days on those. He nodded to her injured feet. You won't have to slow down, she said, relieved. At least she wouldn't be left alone or separated from her smart eye. He sent her a skeptical look and then opened another case. The fire was burning again, illuminating the rough walls of the cave. As he turned away, she noticed he had a patch of blue bruising beneath one arm that spread across his ribs. Arya watched the way the tattoo on his back moved as he moved. She was a falcon too. Her voice had a broad range, but in opera she was characterized as a falcon soprano. That's where Lumina got her nickname. Arya shuddered at the coincidence. Does that have some sort of meaning, she asked. He took garments from the crate and shook them out. They were army fatigues from the time of the Unity. Camouflage cargo pants and a button-down shirt. He tossed them to her. Clothes. She dodged aside and then peered at the coarse mounds of material. Can we boil them first? No answer again. She slipped into the shadows and pulled them on, moving as fast as she could. They were huge on her, but warmer and easier to move in. She rolled and tied them at her wrists and ankles and used the gauze as a belt again. She stepped back toward the firelight. The outsider was sitting where he'd been. He had a dark leather vest similar to the kind boys wore in gladiator realms. Another navy blanket like hers was rolled up at his side. He took quick stock of the adjustments she'd made to her clothes. There's some food in those, he said, nodding to a row of jars set by the fire, and one's filled with water. Aren't we leaving? I've seen the way you move through the dark, he said. We'll sleep now and travel by day. He lay down and closed his eyes as if that were that. She drank some water, but couldn't manage more than a few pieces of the dried fruit. The figs were too grainy, sticking to her throat, and the constant swirl of anxiety in her stomach didn't allow room for hunger. She leaned back against the cold granite. The soles of her feet throbbed, and she wasn't sure if she'd ever be able to sleep. The outsider sure didn't seem to have any trouble with it. She could look at him more closely now that he was asleep. He was covered with imperfections. A faded blue bruise spread over one cheek. matching the one she'd seen on his ribs. Pale scars hashed small lines through the scruff on his jaw. His nose was on the long side and had a bend toward the top, where it had probably been broken more than once. It was a nose fit for a gladiator. The outsider peered at her. Arya froze and their eyes locked. He was human, she knew that, but there was something soulless about that bright stare. Without a word, he turned, so he faced away from her. Arya waited for her heartbeat to settle, then she tugged the blanket over her shoulders and lay down. She kept an eye on the fire and the other on the savage, not sure which repelled her most. Soon her eyes grew heavy, and it occurred to her how often she was wrong. She would sleep, even now, even here. Ta-da! So that is the beginning of her journey. She starts out definitely a little bit out of her element. She has never experienced pain, not ever. So it's her first experience with blisters. It's her first experience with thirst. And, you know, thus begins her transformation. And by the end, she certainly has comes a long way when we last see her in Under the Never Sky.
Thank you for that, Veronica. That was really good. I mean, I don't know about the rest of you who are watching. I felt everything Arya was feeling, that how disgusted she was by Peregrine to start off with, and just that sense of hopelessness when she couldn't reach her mother. She couldn't get back there, that loss. So that was really good. Thank you for reading through the whole thing as well.
Oh, sure.
That's quite fun. So we'll just go into some of the discussion questions. You actually already have one question from Flor Silva. Flor, I'll come back to that. I'll just ask Veronica a couple of questions on our end first before we come there. That's okay with you, Veronica?
Sure.
Okay, awesome. So my first question is, we talked about this earlier. It's not always easy to portray strong women in novels. There are so many instances where women are stereotyped to be, or to act a certain way just because she's a woman, because she's female. So my question to you is, how do you work around that to create a strong female character? One who is empowered enough to know and claim her own rights?
It's something that I think I check myself against, in my writing all the time. And lately what I've been doing actually is I just think about, what if this was a boy? Like, what would this be a behavior that would be, would make me think it's a weak boy? I don't know. For some reason, it's just really easy to make that immediate switch. And then I can kind of see it, quickly catch myself. But it's hard, especially as a fiction writer, because part of what we actually need to do is create real rounded characters, and that entails creating characters with flaws, and otherwise they're not relatable, and so it's a really tricky line to create a flawed female character that doesn't come across as weak, or where the weakness is not necessarily, like you said, Sulo, not because she's female, it's because she's human, because we're all human, we all have weaknesses. So that's the thing that I'm very, very cognizant of as I write. Is it a weakness because she's a human being, or is it am I like falling into some of these stereotypes or some of these cultural constructs? And I try my best. I definitely, I think I'm not, I don't always get it perfect, but it's something that I work really hard in, to do the best job that I can. And I also know that my writer friends and my readers and my, kind of my support group, my agent and editor, everybody has the same goal. We all want to write women who are real and strong and weak, and but that really respect women and treat them as equals. So that's always the goal, is to create a well-rounded and strong woman or girl, because I write YA, so usually they're 17-ish. Yeah, you know, it's something that is definitely a process, I would say. Yeah.
That's a really good answer. Like, what if he was a boy?
Oh yeah, that's the immediate easy thing. Like, you know, would a boy do this? And then I just see it differently sometimes when I do that, you know, and so yeah.
Okay, thanks for that, Veronica.
Yeah.
So just to the next one. In Under the Never Sky, Arya, who has been basically figuring out how to survive after everything changes for her, is very interesting. I mean, I found her a very interesting character. She's a young girl, but she's suddenly pretty much on her own from where she was. But she's not a typical damsel in distress. I mean, even in your reading, it came across very clearly where she was trying to figure out how to trick Peregrine and get back home. I thought that was interesting. Yes, she needed to be saved sometimes, but she's got lots of attitude without being unlikable. She's a strong character as well with a lot of humanity, and that really draws the reader in. And my question is, how did you come up with that approach in writing her character?
Well, you know, it's funny, like it's super interesting. Like I love that you talk about that she needs to be saved because yeah, you know, that's a pet peeve of mine, like the damsel in distress. So, but I do think that people need to be helped sometimes. So my goal is always to like put the hero, you know, also needs to be saved sometimes, you know? So it's like, I just am an equal opportunity, like, you know, sadist, I guess, to my characters. You know, it's like no one's safe. I don't care if you're female. I don't care if you're a kid. You know, I mean, it's just, you know, like they all have hardships that they go through. And yes, she definitely, especially, you know, in this book, because this is a trilogy. And so this particular first installment in the trilogy is the one where she undergoes dramatic transformation. The second book is where Peregrine, who is sharing, you know, 50% of the story, basically, he's the one who really struggles. So they both get it, you know. And then the third book, everybody's in hot water. But this is her book to struggle and stumble and find her way, and he does that very much in this middle installment in the trilogy.
Okay, that's interesting. And I think that takes a different kind of strength to allow yourself to be helped. Because a lot of us go and say, no, I can do it myself. But
Yes.
It takes a different kind of strength to just say, yes, I need the help. Please help me.
It does. Yeah. My second series called Writers, I have a female character who is what you just mentioned. She does not want anybody's help, and she doesn't really open up. She's very, you know, taciturn. I mean, she's very much internal. She can handle everything. She thinks she can, you know, and she's got it. And that kind of creates its own set of issues that that she has to overcome. But Arya is, you know, as a character, she's a big heart, and she's definitely open to, you know, trust. Whereas Darren, my character in the Writers series, is not. Trust is her, like, no, you know. So it's a different thing. And I think that was something that, as a writer, that happened. You know, that was a natural progression for me to write a character who's trusting, and then it was like, okay, let's see how else this can go. And so yeah.
That's cool. And I'd be very keen to read that book the next ride, because I just finished the Under the Never Sky trilogy. So, and I was reading up about writers. It looks really, really interesting. So that's on my list.
Thank you.
My third question is, as a novelist, how important, in your opinion, do you think it is to have a strong female character, not just in novels, but in pop culture as a whole? And I know we talked about the concept of even saying a strong.
Yeah.
don't have to have add the female. But while that's happening, while we work towards that, in the meantime, what do you think about that?
Gosh, I mean, I think we have to have, let's represent all kinds of women, please. Like, can we have strong women? Can we have women who are hilarious? Can we have women who are evil? I mean, let's have them all. I mean, that to me is the end goal, like why do we have to put all these designations on it? Women should be represented for everything they are and can be. So to me, that's the end goal. It's like, yes, the thing is, like, I personally, okay, now I really hope this comes across the right way. Sometimes I get a little bit nervous when we talk about strong women, strong women, strong women, because there are moments when I don't feel strong, and I want to be able to relate to a character that I can look at and go, oh man, she's struggling the way that I am, so I don't think that, I think we need to have everything. And I think we need to put that out there for our young women and for all women to read. We were talking about like in the media, and it's like one of the reasons one of my favorite shows ever is Parks and Rec, because you have an incredibly intelligent woman, you have one who's also intelligent, but maybe comes at it with a different angle. She's like super sarcastic and maybe not as driven as Leslie Knope, and then you have, you just have everything. And to me, like, why can't we do that? Why can't we celebrate everything that women are and can be? I would never respect a woman less because she struggles more than I do, or has a harder time with something than I do. I just never would. Just like I would never respect a woman who has, or disrespect. Did I say respect? What I meant to say is I would never, I would always respect every kind of woman, regardless of whether she's having a hard time, whether she's, granted, and then in fiction, you have to have like, fiction has to have conflict. So you do have to have characters that are gonna dip into personality traits that are a little undesirable. But anyway, I'm rambling a little bit, but in a nutshell, let's have all kinds of women there.
And I find it interesting as well because, and I use the word interesting quite a lot because this is something that always fascinates me. There are so many different kinds of strength, and somehow a lot of time in fiction, we tend to go, that's a woman who kicks ass, so she's a strong woman. But what about the woman who decides consciously to be in the background, doing the work that needs to be done without getting that accolades that the protagonist always gets because she's a kick-ass woman? So there's so many different, a plethora of strengths that women have, that people have, that I think really is represented in fiction, but we tend to pick out the one that's the most obvious, or she's strong because she does this, and kind of forget about the rest of them who do as much in different ways.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I could not agree more, and I work really hard to create in my characters that, a mix of different kinds of strength. Just like you said, showing empathy can be a great form of strength. Having an open mind can be a form of strength. Having compassion can be a form of strength. It doesn't, we don't need to have a very narrow definition. I think it goes back to, I think what I was just saying is like, let's show all kinds of women who have all kinds of strength and have all kinds of, ways of manifesting that. And you see that, like, I mean, it's only right. I mean, it's, again,
Exactly.
like, would we have this conversation about male characters? No, we wouldn't. So, right?
And that's, yes, definitely. I mean, yeah, he's a great character, full stop, and that would be it, Whereas when it comes to women, and that comes back, I think, to what we were talking about before, the before the Hangout started, about the fact that we are waiting for the time when we can actually talk about how do you write such a strong character and not worry about the fact that whether the character is female or not.
Yeah.
So it's something I'm looking forward to.
Yes.
Thank you for that, Veronica. I mean, that was really good, a really good discussion. My next question is, do you think it's important for influential authors such as yourself, who are read all over the world, to make a conscious effort to include characters that are of both the genders in your stories, that show the readers how important it is to respect women as equals and as human beings?
Yeah, I think it is. You know, I mean, I think, okay, so I have a little bit of a, I think that it's the right thing to do, but I also am a very big defender of freedom of artistic expression. So I think it's like the morally right thing to do, you know, but I also do believe that art needs to be free. And so would I be a little disappointed if I didn't see it, you know, in an influential writer? Probably. But I do think that at the end of the day, as much as it sometimes hurts, that's why that is like one of the basic tenets of the American sort of mindset, is like you should be able to say and express yourself the way that you want to. You can only hope that people do it with some social, like, sense of responsibility. So that's like the, kind of a PC answer. I personally think that that it should be done, but I do also believe that I came from a painting background, and in fine art, it was just instilled in my head that you do what you want to do, and many times the more shocking things, or you see a lot of like really shocking art and things that for some reason it's easier for me to relate it in terms of fine art, and like going to a museum where you just see something and you're like, that's awful, I would never do that, but they're allowed to do that, but and so should it be done? Should responsible like character creation be done? Absolutely. I definitely think about it myself. But it is art. I think books are art. So
yeah, and that's fair. I think everyone's entitled to their own kind of freedom of expression, especially artistic, when it comes to art.
Yeah. The thing is, we also have the right to buy those books or not, and that's where like the reader gets to kind of cast their vote, and so that's how we get to sort of comment on those choices.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. I mean, if everyone wrote in PC ways, then there's not really going to be much avenue for discussion and going, hey, why did that character act that way? And and I don't know. I think that's a very good answer.
Well, we have to have discussions, and a lot of times new ideas are radical ideas, so that's just the nature of progress. Sometimes, it can be a little agitating to the society, and sometimes it's, sometimes you see things that open your eyes and make you see things in a better way, and then sometimes you just go no. So, but I think we need to have, that's what I think art is so good for, is that it inspires thought, and so that's why I kind of like want to revise my answer, because I know it doesn't sound great to say like people should be able to say what they want to say even if it's crappy, but it's true. I think that the second we start censoring or like demanding that art needs to be a certain way, then we're done for. I just don't think that's right.
Yeah, and this way you actually start conversations.
Exactly.
Around.
Right.
So if you're limiting what they can say in their art, then you're limiting the conversations that can come out of that.
That's
So,
right.
yeah,
And then it's total, stagnation and bad.
yeah, that's right. And then we're creating a whole Stepford-ish situation. There you
Yes.
go. I will take Flo's question now. Flo said, "Hi Veronica, I'm in Mexico City. I would like to know what things did you research on to write Under the Never Sky books?"
Oh my goodness. I am a big researcher. And for that book, I researched, I read this beautiful book called A Natural History of the Senses, because in the Under the Never Sky trilogy, the characters have the ability to sense, the senses are enhanced in some of the characters. And this was a beautiful, beautiful book. And I actually still pick it up sometimes because it's so poetic and gorgeous, but it's a celebration of the senses. So there's a section on this sense of smell. There's a section on taste, touch, etc. So that book was sitting on my right by my computer as I, or right next to me. I just refer to it all the time because it tapped me into like how lush sensory experience can be, and that really helped me write the characters that had those gifts. I did a ton of research on, there was a pod that was built in Arizona, and I researched that. I believe it belongs to the University of Phoenix now. I could be wrong. Maybe it's U of A, but scientists actually lived inside of it for, I think, a year, and a book was written about it. And so I researched that. I researched genetic drift, because that happens in Under the Never Sky. There's a very small population in the outer world, and these big genetic jumps happen. So I did research that. I researched, really everything that you can kind of think that I did. I mean, opera. I researched. I read studies on, like internet usage and how that starts to create these. At the time it was new research because this book was written about 6 years ago, but at the time research was starting to come out about the link between like being online and depression, like links with that, and what else? Oh, I took archery lessons. That was fun. And if I had the time, I would still do it because I really enjoyed that. In fact, my arrows are right up there. You can't see them. I'll grab one in a second. But I actually made these. Okay, I'm gonna get them. So hold on. All right. Cool. Okay. So I made these.
Awesome.
And I took archery lessons. That was really fun. And so yeah, I don't know. I get really into it. I really, really want to like see what my characters see and like, feel what they feel. And I keep tons of photographs, and I keep tons of, anything that reminds me of them. If I could, I just try to fill this office with as much as I can to get me into that right frame of mind. So yeah.
I hope that answered your question, Flo.
Thank you. Thank you for your question.
That was quite cool. I've got a very, very interesting question from Anusha. And I think this is something not many authors address. So it's quite good. Arya gets a period in Under the Never Sky, something that's very rarely mentioned in YA. Why did you decide to include it, and how important is it to talk about menstruation openly instead of treating it as a taboo? Can this openness aid equal treatment? A very good question, Anusha.
That is, you'd be surprised by how many people bring that up to me. I'm thanked a lot by women who are like, thank you, because all these stories happen and it's never mentioned once, and it's such a big part of being a woman, and to me, it was just like, I just didn't want to ignore that. And especially because this particular character is really going from kind of being this half, like almost a synthetic human, who's never really breathed outside air or had pain, like I said, or, you know, really even like she's never seen dirt. She's never seen, you know, felt wind until she's kicked out of this pod. And her journey, she kind of, you know, in the outer world, she starts to become more and more human. She starts to human in a visceral way, in a bodily way. And so that was a part of that transformation. She does get her period for the first time. And I really wanted to have the hero or the male protagonist, Peregrine. I loved that he sort of had this almost like instinctive reaction to it, which is like, this is how, you know, this is necessary. And it's because she just doesn't, you know, she's never, it's obsolete in her world. And she has no framework for how to grasp this thing that's going on with her. But, you know, I think that when you think about it, like evolutionarily, you know, it's something that is important, and it's, I don't know, there are many times where I'm like, why is there so much cultural taboo around this? You know, it's so normal. And like, I just wanted it in the book. I just really wanted her to, you know, go through this and get, you know, just be a woman, you know, that's not going to hide from that. So yeah, so thanks for asking that.
Yeah, that I love it because, you know, I read a lot, and I've read a lot of dystopian YA fantasy, you know, Hunger Games, the Kite Runner, sorry, not the Maze Runner, those series, and I always think this is going on over like a month, over a couple of
Yeah.
months, like, and she's just going, and there's no mention about the fact that, you know, you have a woman's bodily function that's in our biology, and there's no mention of it.
Mm-hmm.
Even in a lot of romance novels, you know, the ones where they crash in some deserted island, and I'm like, wow, that's amazing, you know. So it's good that we talk about that.
Yeah, and you know, it's a coming of age story. You know, she's becoming, and so that's a rite of passage. You know, that's like part of becoming a woman. And I don't know. I wish it was celebrated more, and I wish it was present more in our fiction, because I know that when I was a kid and I read "Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret," or, you know, I mean, I don't know. Anytime that I saw something that handled it, I just felt a little bit more like, you know, comforted. Like, okay, this is normal. This is good. So for teen girls, I think it's important to not make it, you know, something to be distraught about. Like, it's a cool thing. It's hard to be like, yeah, it's a cool thing, yay. But really, you know, it's part of what we are as women, and we have to embrace that.
It's just like, you know, you saying, hey, I need to pop into the ladies to use the restroom. It needs to be part of that conversation, instead of being in schools when you are at that age, you're a teenager, you've just reached puberty, you're going through all these changes, and on top of it, being female and having a period is a taboo to talk about, and you're embarrassed about it. So it's a great thing to be able to actually have that conversation out in the open. So thank you for that, Veronica.
Oh yeah. No, I love how much I hear about it from readers. I really do.
So that will lead us to our next question. We talked about this earlier. Parents are usually the most influential role models in a person's life. And since you have two boys, what do you think parents can do to help prevent violence against women and girls in future generations, and to get the boys involved in helping to do so?
I mean, I'm going to just answer because it's what is in the news right now. And this is what I'm doing now with my boys, but we talk a lot about, you know, current events as they pertain specifically to violence against women. there are a lot of very high profile cases right now in the news about rapes on college campuses, and my kids are 11 and 14. You know, it's probably a little young. I mean, I don't quite, you know, I tread carefully as I speak to them about these things, but we definitely have conversations about it and respecting women. And, you know, we talk about, I just, you know what it is, I just try to make it open discussion. And I try to, you know, I've always, I never miss an opportunity to have a discussion with them, even if it's in the car and, you know, a rap song will come on that is a little bit like sketchy and kind of portrays women in this unfavorable light. My kids are getting a feminist lecture daily. And I mean, I'm kidding. You know, I don't literally let's like just beat it into their heads, but we talk about it. You know, I'll just say like, do you really think this is a like a nice thing to say about a woman? And I'll just be like, I'm a woman. Do you think, you know, how would you feel if this was said about me? And so I think that, you know, I would have loved to have had a daughter. I have two amazing boys, and they will grow up knowing that, you know, their mother is a strong woman, and that I won't stand by, you know, disrespect for myself or for other women, you know, and that they shouldn't either. You know, they definitely are aware. I mean, I'm just constantly trying to like say, well, look at that. Do you think that's right? And then we have conversations about it, you know, and I don't know, that's the best that I can do, you know, is just make them aware, talk to them. And we do a lot of like, you know, try to talk through how they would react if they saw, you know, something. And I just want them to kind of have it on their minds and be aware that this is something that is prevalent. I think it's like a big part of it with men and young men is like giving them the right lens through which to see how much of this is happening around them, how often, you know, women are disrespected even in the slightest ways. It all kind of is just like so prevalent. Who was it? A friend of mine yesterday was talking or sent this tweet about a remake of Oliver Twist. And it was like, the headline was like, Hollywood's got, you know, a sexy Oliver Twist remake. It's like, why does it have to be sexy? You know, like why? Can't it just be, because it was a gender swap. So they were going to remake it with female characters, and it was going to be a sexy female Oliver Twist. And I'm like, why, you know, can't it just be a female gender swap? You know, so little things like that. We talk about it, you know, like why, because it's female, does it have to be sexy? Can't it just be female, you know? So anyway, that's a longish answer, but I think open discourse is the way to go. Does everybody feel like it's a safe way to talk about, you know, these things? And yeah, yes, I do.
Thank you for that. And I agree completely. Like, you know, you're talking about Oliver Twist, a sexy gender swap thing, and my first thing was, but Oliver Twist is a kid, so even if you gender swap it, it's a little girl. So why do you want to do sexy like remake?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So they're going to make it. So it's really, it's just like a total mutilation of the concept, just to kind of like, I don't know, interest people maybe, but they're going to be older and it's going to be sexy and it's going to be female. So it's like, wait, what are we actually still using from the original Oliver Twist, you know? And just that's, yeah. So anyway, that kind of stuff just drives me bananas.
Sorry. My next question is, in your opinion, how can authors like yourself best support efforts to kick off social change to end violence against women? I think that segues straight into the previous question about, you know, having that conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, just being involved, you know, trying to get the word out. I think, honestly, you know, I don't know how many people I can reach. Hopefully it's a few people, but I would like to use, you know, that ability to try to raise some awareness. But I think that, you know, even at the smallest level, it can be powerful. You know, helping one person can be incredibly important and powerful. I'm super glad to be part of this. You know, this is something, like I mentioned before, that I just feel honored to be a part of it, and I think it's important. And you know, I think just using whatever vehicle, whatever means you have available to you to try to raise discussions and raise awareness and raise support.
Okay. Thanks for that. I have another question from Flor. So Flor wants to know, in Riders, what was the most difficult thing to write as Gideon, since it's from a male perspective? And before you answer that, I'll just, because there's another question from Anusha, which is quite similar. She said, how were you able to write from two such different perspectives in two different voices, Arya and Perry?
You know, the question about how to get into a character's perspective is an interesting one. I prefer to just try to think of them as people. I don't mean to sort of like diminish the fact that it's probably very different living in a boy's body than it is in a girl's body. However, when I create a character, that's probably not really the first thing that I think about. I think about just kind of like their heart and their psychology and their whatever that sort of like burning desire is that they have within them, whatever that like great lack is, whatever that sort of, you know, dream is that they carry around. I think those definitely lead the way for me. And then, you know, and then I do just try to like inhabit, you know, I try to get as close as I can to what that character is feeling as they move through the day. And, you know, Gideon in Riders is an incredibly like, sort of like athletic guy. And so when I was working on that, I was running a lot and just trying to kind of like, you know, I'd run and I'd think about him and I'd think like, this is probably fun for him and I'm miserable, you know, but, and then you know, and I would just like, when I was working with Arya's character, she's incredibly auditory. And so I would think, you know, I would just like think about how she would go around and hear things differently than I do, you know. And so it's really a matter of just finding all the little ways like that a character is going to view the world differently. Like that unique perspective, I think, is what makes a character. And that all comes from what they want out of life, what they feel they don't have out of life, what they, you know, what like excites them, what makes them afraid. And I think it's just like, those things to me are just like actually like bigger than male, female, I guess. Again, not to say that that isn't important. It is important, but I really start with like the kind of like the very essence of who the person is as a human. Like, is this someone who is prone to, like I mentioned Darren, is she prone to being distrustful? And then why? And why is she, you know, really guards her independence? Well, why is that so? The character of Gideon in Riders, he's fiery. He really is, does not shy away from like, you know, like as a person, I'm the type of person, I'm very conflict sort of averse. I don't like conflict, but for him in his mind, it's like, let's just have this out right now. I mean, it's just going to fester if we don't talk this out. So he's very like direct and he goes right at things and right at problems. Whereas I am just like, oh, I'm going to just go think about this for about 5 years and then I might get back to you, you know? And so, you know, and that's the fun of being a writer is just like trying to imagine what it's like to be a different person, you know, or like these crazy little puppeteers, you know, working with different types of people and move, you don't really move them around the board. They actually do it. Once you really lock into a character, they run the show. They show you where they want to go. But that sounds a little crazy, but it's fun. Yeah.
It sounds fun to do that. Like you kind of get out of your head and into someone else's. That's always something fun to do.
Yeah.
I think.
I would do it anyway. I mean, I did. I've always been the person, the kid who would sit like, waiting for the bus, and I would just like make up stories about someone walking by, or just was always telling stories in my head anyway. So it's just an extension of that, I think.
Oh, that's nice. It's always nice to be able to turn your hobbies into a proper career, something that you enjoy.
Yeah, it really is.
Your passion. So there you go. It's a winning situation for you.
Yes, it is. I feel so lucky to do what I do. I love my job.
Oh, fantastic. I have another couple of questions for you, and then my last question, and we'll probably wrap up.
Okay.
So the next question is from Regina. She said, YA has many strong female characters, such as Katniss, Tris, and Hermione. Do you think that YA female protagonists are in danger of being stereotyped? Or is YA leading the way with showcasing diverse female characters with all kinds of strength? That comes back to, I think, our previous discussion about the different kind of strength women have.
B. So the second one, I think YA is absolutely amazing at showing all kinds of female characters, and I love the genre for that. It's yeah, I think it's an incredibly responsible, intelligent community of writers, and everybody is it's really an honor to be a part of such a group of socially minded and forward-thinking people in the genre. So I think it's definitely on the forefront of that.
That's great. And I mean, this is my interpretation of YA, is that the audience with young adults and children, they're a lot more open to suggestions and to ideas than most adults are. So I think that's such a fantastic genre to actually push the whole concept of women strong with different kinds of strength and build that generation. So the next generation is kind of like, yeah, there's nothing wrong with having that woman be the mother who takes care of everybody, or the woman who picks up the sword and does what needs to be done.
That's right.
Okay, sorry. Got one more question from Regina. Geek culture, including fantasy, has had its share of critics saying that it's still too male-dominated, despite a rising number of prominent female authors. What do you think needs to be done to make geek culture more welcoming for women and girls?
I'm not sure that I know enough to actually really answer that. It's unfortunately probably one I'd need to think about a little bit but I think, if it's anything like Hollywood, I think, or I know that a little bit from having many years ago worked in it. A lot of the decision makers are men, and so that is something that is I think would absolutely make a big difference if you start bringing women into the decision-making positions. Then you're automatically going to elevate all women who are, writing, who are trying to get, equal representation at everything, conferences, get, equal advances, and get, any barometer that you really have. If women are part of the decision makers, then women are going to fare much better. The women who, are trying to rise up will definitely fare better. That's a little bit of without really knowing too much about, I guess I would need to know a little bit more about what you mean, like what specific industry you're talking about. And I don't know, I'm not sure I know enough to know, but I definitely think that that we need to bring women into more decision making in really everything, in business, in politics, in film and television. And it's one of the things that's actually really great about the YA genre is that many of the editors who are buying books and making the decisions about which ones are published or not are women. So it's a really great place to be as a woman, and I feel really lucky to be in this genre. That's one of many reasons.
And I agree completely. I think, and again, that comes back to what I said earlier about how YA is just one of those genres that's so open, and pretty much there's so many things, there's so much potential there.
Yeah.
For the readers as well as the writers. So I think that's a great genre to go into to introduce new topics or to introduce discussions or conversations.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I have one last question for you before we start wrapping up. You have been so very incredibly supportive of our Read for Pixels campaign and our anti-violence against women work as a whole. Why do you, as a person and as a writer, support the cause to end violence against women?
I mean, I think it's absolutely of critical importance. I have personal reasons for wanting to support this. It's something that has kind of affected my life, not necessarily incredibly directly, but directly enough. And I also know that it is a problem. It's a huge problem, and why would anyone not want to support this? Is really the answer that I kind of immediately want to give you. It's the right thing, and anything that I can do to help this is absolutely my honor and pleasure to do.
Thank you, Veronica, for that. And we are very happy and grateful that you are one of our supporters. We're really honored for that as well.
Thank you.
And that wraps up our Q&A session today. If you guys still have questions, sorry.
Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Sulo.
Fantastic. No worries. I'm just going to wrap up now and say, as we mentioned earlier, Veronica's goodie bundle has been snapped up, but there's still lots of lovely goodies available, and there's more coming out every few days over the month of September. So head on over to, well, I will show you the slide so you can check it out. So you can donate to these goodies. Let me just swap the screen for a minute. There you go. Start screen sharing.
Yay,
can everyone do that? Yay! Okay. So donate for geeky goodies in Indiegogo at is.gd/r4p Indiegogo 2016. For PayPal donors, you can head on to is.gd/r4p Rezu 2016. And of course, if you want to find out more about Read for Pixels, it's is.gd/Read for Pixels. Pretty easy. And I will stop the screen share now and lock this back onto you, Veronica. And so if you want to find out more about violence against women and what you can do about it, visit the Pixel Project's website at thepixelproject.net. And also, once again, to find out more about the Celebrity Male Role Model Pixel Reveal campaign, please visit reveal.thepixelproject.net to learn more about it, and please do donate generously to help us reveal pixels and reach the $1 million for the cause. Once again, we thank Veronica Rossi for joining us today. We know it's a public holiday weekend, so we really appreciate the fact that she's taken time out of her day to help us out here today, and also for her donations. And for the rest of you who've joined us, thank you so much for joining us today. We've all had a good time. And hope you have a good day or a good night wherever you are in the world. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
All right.